Broadcasting live from Lothal. Good morning, Lothal. It's the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Good Morning Lothal, the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast. I'm Pete Salas, along with
Rolando Zamora.
How are we doing, Rolly?
I'm great. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, too. Thanks for asking. Okay, you ready to talk some Star Wars today?
Oh, absolutely. I'm totally excited for this show. Hyped for every aspect of everything we're going to talk about in today's episode.
Me too. Okay, so today's episode is episode 10. It's called Path of the Jedi. But before we get to that, as usual, Rolly, what's happening around the galaxy?
Let's see what's happening this week in Star Wars.
Okay, so I don't think it's any secret of what we're going to talk about today. We have Kenobi going on. We are going to be dedicating, for fans that don't already know this, we are going to be dedicating for sure a segment to Kenobi every episode as this series is continuing. And this past week we had episode 3 drop. If you heard our last episode, me and Pete were like extremely hyped and excited for everything that we saw in the first 2 episodes. So We're going to carry over that enthusiasm and talk about episode 3 today. So let me direct this segment, I guess. Same as last week, I'll ask you, Pete. What did you think about the episode?
Man, it's a no-brainer if you know me, man. It was a Vader-centric episode, and I loved everything about it. I mean, that's all you're going to hear from me is praise on this one. But I very much, I mean, I was wrong. I thought that it was, actually, rather than say I was wrong, I'm going to say you were right. Absolutely right that this is going to be all about Vader in this one, and it sure as heck was. We saw a very different Vader than what, I mean, very different from the original trilogy for sure. It was closer to the Rogue One Vader where, everyone was talking about how they let him like actually be a true, murderous bad guy. And this version of him in Kenobi was no different. Absolutely loved it. So my takeaway was going to be Vader all the way.
Yeah, I agree. Number 1, starting with Vader. Vader he killed it in this episode, and that's literal in every sense of the word. I think the first takeaway for me was like, again, referring back to Rogue One, like Pete mentioned, in that movie, you just saw him go off on those rebel troopers as he's chasing them down the hallway, trying to get the Death Star plans from them that they had just stolen. And he's just slaughtering them with the lightsaber and the Force. Well, if he thought that was going to be somehow peak Vader, you were wrong. In this episode, they're on to Kenobi. He's chasing them down, and Vader is just straight up walking through the town in Tatooine. No lightsaber. Guy just starts Force choking, breaking necks, dragging some like poor person through the street, like completely called for reasons. He was just was insane. Truly even more unleashed than when we saw him in Rogue One. It was awesome. And leading up to where he actually, confronts Kenobi. And I wasn't expecting a lightsaber fight.
Me either.
Mind you, it was a totally different tone of a lightsaber fight because Kenobi is just completely broken. But Vader just starts toying with him like like he knows he has no chance. He recognizes the person that he is, and he's like, you know what? Rather than kill my nemesis, quote unquote, I'm gonna make him suffer the way that I suffered. Yeah, and that ending where Vader basically lights the ground on fire and starts burning Kenobi's like side of his face, side of his arm, whatever. That was just an insanely powerful scene because he drops a single line in that sequence to Obi-Wan, and he tells him, I am what you made me, or you are what, however he worded it, the part that I'm talking about. I am what you made me. Let's go with that. It's funny because one of the TikTok people that I follow, she painted like a very, very powerful image of just that one line, and that it takes on so many different meanings. It takes on the literal meaning as he's burning Kenobi. He's like, I am what you made me, referring back to when Kenobi basically let him, catch fire and burn there on Mustafar. But he's also talking about him in the sense that like, I'm this powerful because of you. it's not just a literal you made me into this freakish monster. I'm half, I'm not who I am anymore. I'm burnt. But he's also meaning in the literal sense that like you're doing this to yourself. It's because of your training that I'm able to make you suffer here and now. So it's just, that scene was just awesome. I don't know, like, ultimately why he lets Obi-Wan go. That's a question that I wanted to know. So I'm not going to, dwell too much into that. I'm more so about what I was given in that episode. So yeah, definitely Vader-centric episode. That's the heavy takeaway from Kenobi. Having said that, though, for all the Clone Wars fans out there, pretty big name got dropped. Quinlan Vos.
Yes.
So when Kenobi is going through the underground tunnels to safety, I forget the name of the character that's leading him through, but it's the chick from Game of Thrones. She tells him this is she plays.
That's where I saw her. That's where I saw her. Okay.
She's like coincidentally, she's Oberyn's wife in there, who's also Din Djarin from The Mandalorian.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So that is actually a cool connection that I just, I just realized right now that we're talking about her. So she's telling Kenobi that this is the path where they've been helping plenty of people like get to safety to avoid the Empire. So when they're down in that tunnel, Kenobi sees like a bunch of like writings and drawings on the cave walls, and he specifically sees one of Quinlan Vos. And it's funny because coincidentally, I've been reading, and as I mentioned these in the past few episodes, I've been reading Dark Disciple, and Dark Disciple is 100% about Quinlan Vos.
Oh, okay.
So
cool.
It was a super awesome connection. So I was reading it, and then the episode dropped. I saw it, and I was like, yeah, you better go back and finish that book before we record the next episode to give the full scoop. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I know I kind of like highly recommend a lot of Star Wars books, like almost every single one I read, but this one in particular, I got to tell you, just to kind of paint a backdrop about it, Dark Disciple is based on 8 unreleased episodes in the Clone Wars. I might have mentioned this in the previous episode, but season 6 of Clone Wars is the one where it wasn't complete. That's the one where we got the inhibitor chips malfunctioning. We got the Yoda sub story, but there was no continuous story that was going on there. So basically what happened was that season came out after Clone Wars already was officially canceled when Disney bought Star Wars, because Clone Wars was on Cartoon Network. So I guess there wasn't a deal to be releasing Star Wars content through that media, so they just canceled it. So this season ended up dropping on Netflix because there was episodes that were done. There was so much fan demand. The Clone Wars were so popular at that point. So they just released 3 sub stories. Well, this one was supposed to be, and get this, man, this one was supposed to be an 8 episode arc. That's how huge this story was. And that's how much I highly recommend this book, because it is like you're literally reading, or if you're an audiobook person like me, you're listening to more Clone Wars. And I don't know of one single person that could say I've had enough Clone Wars in my life. So just to kind of give a bit of a summary of it, the premise of the book is that the Jedi Council decides, hey, we need to take out Count Dooku to end this war. And they do it through a very weird means, in that they decide to assassinate him, which is not part of the Jedi code at all. So they choose Quinlan Vos because Quinlan's a master tracker through his use of psychometry. And psychometry basically means that whatever he touches, he senses the force echo of where that object's been, who's handled it. He basically sees visions through everything that he touches. What ends up happening is Obi-Wan recommends him to track down Asajj Ventress. And at this point, Asajj Ventress is already kind of like doing her own thing. She's not Count Dooku's apprentice anymore. She had some side missions with Boba Fett in that were released Clone Wars episodes. So he's like, he tells him, if anybody can get to Ventress successfully, it's her. She used to be his apprentice. So Vos tracks her down. She proceeds to train him, get him ready to confront Dooku. But in that process, they end up falling in love with each other. Which of course is forbidden for the Jedi. So sequence of events plays out. They confront Dooku. Vos gets captured and Asajj escapes. So since they're already in love, Asajj develops a plan. She reaches out to the Jedi to go help rescue Vos. Well, in that process, she senses that Vos is actually turned to the dark side completely, and Vos is kind of like covering it, like saying, "No, I'm not." The Jedi don't sense it; only she does, and nobody believes her. Well, again, more events play out. They find out he really did fall to the dark side, and when they go to confront him, Asajj is like, she has all her eggs in that basket because their relationship's at stake. So what ends up happening, just to kind of summarize, is there's an event where Dooku is given the opportunity to kill Voss, and in the process of him doing so, Ventress actually jumps in front of the Force lightning and takes the full blunt of it, and ends up, unfortunately dying. And in that process of her dying, Voss himself turns away from the dark side and comes back to the light. And it's a really, I know I'm like not explaining it very thoroughly. It's a book. It's very powerful. I highly recommend it to everybody because it's I think we are going to see more of Quinlan Voss for sure in the upcoming. Now that he's been name dropped, I don't think he's not going to come out. This book is about Quinlan Voss. I think, we're going to get more of that story, and he has a very awesome background. So I'm excited to see him show up in Kenobi. I know I did a large segue in there into Dark Disciple, but
no, that's fine.
I have expectations of Voss now in Kenobi just because of this book.
Question. If it's such a big, heavy, character with a lot of backstory, a lot of potential future story to tell, do you think that him showing up potentially in Kenobi might lead into maybe a spin-off for him or something? Because there's only 4 episodes left of Kenobi. I mean, how much can they fit of Quinlan Voss to not take away from the storyline that they've already put in place?
Yeah, what's interesting, I have 2 comments on that. Number 1, I do think he's going to show up heavily because I have a feeling that now that Reva has Leia, as they showed you there at the end, I think Kenobi's going to seek out Voss to help him track Leia.
Okay.
That's my opinion. We'll see if it actually happens. And number 2, I don't know how much we're going to get of Voss, but I do know that there was already talk of Kenobi season 2 this week. I don't know if you saw that or not, man.
I did not see that. So that's great news. I thought that he was only like a 1 and done or a 6 and done in this case.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. And because of it, I had like really high expectations for these last 3 episodes. I don't want to take away from that. So I'm not even going to fathom how much of that season 2 talk is true. I want to see a strong final 3 episodes of this. So I'm not going to think like, they're going to hold off certain items for season 2.
I would have to assume at the time that they were, producing this and shooting it, they already had it in mind that he was done after these 6. So it probably will have a, for the lack of a better term, a finality to episode 6. You know what I mean? Like they probably planned for that already. So I think you'll get exactly what you want. But yeah, that's a lot of story for Quinlan Voss for them to just mention his name and not for him not to show up again. You're right about that. It's just I'm just worried about the time frame in order to fill in the gaps for people who didn't read that book, that you're talking about. And
what I was actually thinking, and I was just actually talking to my nephew about it over lunch today, is I think what they're going to end up doing is, remember I said there's 8 episodes of the Clone Wars that weren't released. I think that because of him coming out in this show, I think fans are really going to like it and want to know more. And Disney will create and release those unreleased episodes of Quinlan Voss. Even the people that have read the book and knew more about him before Kenobi, I know, hey, if reading that book, it makes you want to see it visually. It's so good. And I think that might be I think he shows up and helps Kenobi, and then he either gets some kind of spin-off because clearly he's alive, so there's more to it after the fact, or at the very least, I would be full on board to get those unreleased Clone Wars episodes. I think it would be awesome to see that after I just finished reading that book, Dark Disciple.
Yeah, no, of course. And just to circle back to Vader real quick, it did seem like you posed the question, like, I wonder why he just kind of let him go and didn't pursue him or whatever. But I mean, more than anything, just based on the fact that this wasn't really a duel, so to speak, because he clearly had him beat several times. It was just, it seemed more like a sparring thing, like when a heavyweight beats up on a like a practice dummy kind of a thing. So
it's like those squash matches that we're familiar with in wrestling.
Right, exactly. Yeah. that is exactly what it felt like. And I think more than anything, it was just to have another shot at embarrassing him and hurting him even more. And he knows, more or less where he is, how to find him. Now he knows that at the very least, he'll be going to go try and save Leia. So as long as keeps Leia near him, then Kenobi's gonna eventually come, because it goes back to what the Inquisitor said in episode 1, which is, like, they just can't help themselves. Jedis just cannot help themselves.
Yeah, so, that's very true. That's a solid point. You have any expectations for episode 4? I mean, my only real one is see more of Voss and see more of, obviously where the story goes with Obi-Wan and Vader. I for once, I'm not going to make any bold predictions. I know that it might not happen in episode 4. It's probably not going to happen until episode 6, but we will get those two holding lightsabers against each other again, and this time it's going to be a much, much more even match, I believe. Yeah, I hope so. Anyways, moving on from Kenobi, if we're
I'm sorry. Time out.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
The one thing that I will say is I'm crossing fingers that if they maybe wanted to leave it open-ended for a season 2, I want to see some sort of either mention or appearance of Darth Maul. I think that there needs to be some sort of just even a mention, just to give me hope for a season 2.
That would be a good tease to, like, at least showcase, like, we know he's in Rebels. We're encouraging you to watch Rebels. We're not going to feature him in this show, but know that he's very much still part of the Obi-Wan arc, just in Rebels. Oh, I mean, spoiler for Rebels.
Even that's fine. Even if it's like one of those, Marvel kind of after credit sequences, like after the last episode rolls and the credits all go through, let's just see like a dark tunnel and we just hear Kenobi like screaming out of there.
That would be awesome.
That's all I need, and I would be like, I'm in.
I'm all for that. Yeah.
You were saying about birthdays.
Let's get into birthdays to close up this week segment. First birthday, Daniel Logan. He played young Boba Fett in Attack of the Clones. He's 35 years old as of June 6th. June 6th. That's today, the day we're recording.
I met him at a con.
He was at a con down here. I remember it's been a while, but I remember he was down here. Yeah,
he's nice. He's a nice dude. Mm-hmm. I met him backstage.
That's what I was gonna say too. Like, all these people, you follow all these people on Star Wars. This guy is always commenting on everything, like whether they're in the cartoons or in the movies or the actual live action shows. So that guy's a fanboy. That's in Star Wars. Mind you, he was a kid, but still really cool. Definitely a good follow on Instagram if you don't follow him. Jason Isaacs, who voices the Grand Inquisitor on Rebels. He's 59 years old today on June 6th. Kathleen Kennedy, the president of Lucasfilm, turned 69 years old on June 5th. She is responsible for she worked with George Lucas. She's been responsible for carrying the torch ever since. I know that a lot of people have a lot of faith in Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, the direction that they're taking Star Wars with The Mandalorian, but doesn't matter what you think about the sequels and such. Kathleen Kennedy definitely, is responsible for Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni being in the positions that they're in. So
if nothing else, she hired them to do those jobs. So
yeah, exactly. And
so she deserves some credit.
Yeah, definitely. And last but certainly not least, Vivian Lyra Blair, young Leia. So here's funny story. She's 10 years old, and
wow,
that's as of June 4th. What's funny is there's been a lot of talk about her online, and I don't remember some of the criticism was like, she acts like she's 10, and then people would respond because she is 10, and now her birthday passed and she's actually 10.
She's actually 10 years old.
I thought that was super funny, but no criticism here on this podcast, as you heard in our last discussion. And speaking of criticism, I actually want to segue that into our next topic of discussion. And Pete, let him have it.
Okay, so this was one of those things. We're gonna get a little hot button here for just a second. We're not going to, hopefully, not trying to upset anybody. Well, I would hope we're not upsetting anybody by what we're saying, because if we do, we don't really want you, to be fair, because there has been a lot of ugliness being spewed out in the social media world about Moses Ingram, who plays the third sister, correct?
Yes, Reva.
And it is completely forget it being unjustified, forget it being, just ugly. It's just, it's dumb. It is really, really dumb. And I reached out to Rolly a couple days ago just to ask, like, should we mention it? Or should we not do that thing where we take a stance any one way or the other? For the most part, it doesn't matter what your political affiliation, what your beliefs are, whatever, but this should be one of those things that we should all be united on as far as being Star Wars fans. And what I'm talking specifically about is the fact that they cast an African-American woman in such a prominent role in this show, so much so that the internet trolls / racists, because that's what they are, were attacking her personally on her personal social media. And I asked Rolly, like, should we address it? And we both agreed that yes, we should. And we both agree that has absolutely no place in fandom, especially Star Wars fandom.
Yeah, definitely. This, the Star Wars, there's always going to be different perspectives, different points of view, different arguing points. And we're here for that. We're here for the healthy discussions, the differences of opinion, but we're certainly not here for any form of racism, sexism, misogyny, bigotry. If you have any hateful comment that is just completely uncalled for with regards to what everybody is here to enjoy in Star Wars, we don't welcome that. We don't tolerate it. And, please just move on. If you're for that, don't park here. Don't partake in this. If it's not gonna happen, we'll just leave it at that.
Right.
I'm getting like boiled up just talking about it. So I know, like, you heard our opinion of Reva in the last episode, so you very much know what our stance is with regards to her character. And hey, guess what? If for whatever reason you wish her character was like something different, that's fine. Those are those healthy discussions and differences we're talking about. But if for whatever reason you're associating that to be because of her color of skin or because of her gender, that's certainly not called for. So
absolutely,
please, let's keep it civil. Let's keep it, fun, and let's not attack characters that are playing characters, in this universe that we all want to partake in and enjoy.
Right, exactly. And upon doing a little research on this and just reading some stuff, I came across I want to call it funny, but like, because of what it's associated with, it's not that funny, but there's a term called the fandom menace. Like, that is what they're calling these people. They are the same people who are going off and going to like Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic and all that stuff and low downvoting, I guess, the show, this brilliant, amazing show that, like, come on, if you don't think that this is a great show, then you're stupid, okay? Because this is a great show if you're a Star Wars fan. So if you're going there to purposely downvote it because you're upset about a casting call, because that goes back to your own like inner racism, then you're not a fan. Then that's what I'm saying. Like, they call them the fandom menace, and clever. It's a clever, pun, but I wish that it didn't exist, I guess, is my point.
Yeah, I hear you.
But
so yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's our This Week in Star Wars recap and official stance, because that's been very much a hot topic here over the past week.
Right. The last thing I'm going to say on this is there was a really good post. I don't remember if it was from the Star Wars official Twitter or Facebook or whatever, but they basically said that there's like 14 billion sentient species in the Star Wars universe. Why do you choose to be a racist? Like, none of them are racist, or however they worded it, but it was a very well said. Like,
yeah, come on. And I like how Ewan McGregor also came out and specifically addressed it head on, and he basically said the same thing we did. Like, just move on if you're going to be that way. It's right. Yeah, there's no tolerance for that.
Right. And there's 14 billion Star Wars fans too, so if we don't need racist ones, basically. So
yeah, seriously.
Anyway, before we move on to today's episode, again, I keep forgetting. I'm sorry, Rolly. I read your notes, but I skipped right past it. Please, people, like, share, and subscribe. If you're enjoying the show, if you're enjoying what we're doing, what we're talking about, if you just like me and Rolly, just give us give us a shout out, share it with your friends, like, share, and subscribe. We very much appreciate it. And rate. Please rate us.
Yeah, and get into our
Apple.
Comments also. Like,
yes.
We're talking about Kenobi. Talk about Kenobi with us. Like,
right.
Get involved in the discussion. Yeah,
for
definitely.
Sure. Definitely want to hear from you. All right, Rolly. So this episode of Rebels it's episode 10. It's called Path of the Jedi. And when we were talking right before we recorded, you mentioned, and I agree, this is probably the best episode of season 1 so far, by far.
Definitely. Absolutely.
So why don't you hit us with a synopsis?
So in this episode, Kanan and Ezra travel to a Jedi temple in Lothal, where Ezra contests his readiness to be trained as a Jedi. Ezra makes his way through the temple alone and confronts his fear of abandonment, manifested through visions of the Grand Inquisitor killing all of his friends. Along the way, both Ezra and Kanan, who must also confront his own fears of his inadequacy as a teacher, are guided by Jedi Master Yoda. In the end, Ezra passes all the tests, receives a kyber crystal, and is able to finally construct his own lightsaber.
A lot happening in this episode, and it was all good from top to bottom. T to B, it was an excellent 22 minutes of this. This is exactly what we Rolly said in a previous episode, that, like, you know, if you feel it's kind of getting a little slow, stick with it because it really picks up. And I think that this is the beginning. This is like they really start turning up the heat as far as there's going to be several more episodes that are this jam-packed and important.
Yeah, so, like, we're really gearing up towards the finale here. I think there is 15 total episodes in season 1 of Rebels. This is episode 10. So we have 5 more. But like I mentioned before, this show really ramps up in season 2. And this is honestly the beginning of it. So yeah, this is where it's going to start getting exciting. So if you've been kind of whatever about the last few episodes, start paying attention here, because it's a lot of awesome story and a lot of details in each episode that I'm excited to talk about.
So the episode starts with a shot of Ezra running back. He's just hauling ass down a Lothal wheat field, kicking loaf cats left and right. But anyway, he's running back to the Ghost because he is running late for class. He's running late for Jedi training with Kanan, and we see a shot of Kanan meditating, and he's looking at a star map on his holocron. And Kanan is obviously upset because Ezra's running late, and he tells Ezra to prepare for a larger test to determine if he's meant to be a Jedi. So take it from there.
Yeah, so they get into a conversation, and Ezra basically begins to argue with Kanan, telling him, well, I thought I was already a Jedi. That's what you told me I'm going to be. So Kanan basically tells him, I never said that. I said you have the potential to become a Jedi.
Right.
So when he tells him that, Ezra kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to start getting hyped right here so that I can do what it takes to become a Jedi, because my master is clearly telling me that there's a chance that I can't be. So he goes to the Phantom to prepare to leave, and he's completely eager. And in that process, Kanan passes by Hera, and Hera kind of reaffirms to Kanan that, hey, you need to help Ezra, particularly after his contact that he made with the dark side in the previous episode. So Kanan, at that point, his fear is that Ezra's getting to the point where he's getting much more experienced, and he's afraid that he's not going to be a suitable teacher. So this episode is leading to both Ezra and Kanan growing,
that's interesting. I didn't really even put that together until you just said it right now, that it was not so much a fear that Ezra isn't prepared to be a student, it's that he's not prepared to really be a teacher. So that's an interesting take on that.
Oh yeah. I mentioned a few weeks ago that Kanan is my 1B favorite character. Mm-hmm. And this is part of it. You really see him grow over these 4 seasons of Rebels. And I remember when I first saw this series, my least favorite, my least favorite character when I saw season 1 was probably Kanan. By the end of the series, my favorite character was Kanan.
Wow. Complete 180.
Yeah. So that's how good this show is. So anyways, they're on the Phantom. They're already flying off into space, and Kanan proceeds to tell Ezra, hey, I need you to locate the nearest Jedi temple. And Ezra's like, well, how am I supposed to do that? And he's like, use the Force. Sure enough.
Right.
That's the answer to everything in the Star Wars universe. So Ezra proceeds to connect with the Force, and sure enough, he locates the temple. Well, the temple happens to already be on Lothal. Kanan already knew this. He saw it on the star map, but he wanted Ezra to find it for himself. That was part of the training. So basically, they get off the Phantom. Kanan proceeds to go into like meditation. And he tells Ezra, go find the opening for the temple. Well, he can't, because it's basically just a big rock. That's all it looks like. So he's looking around, feeling around. He's like, I can't find the temple, or I can't find the entrance rather. And Kanan tells him that's because you have to stop and listen. Like you can't physically do things as a Jedi. You always have to use the Force as a guidance. So Ezra proceeds to do that, and the temple actually speaks to him, so to say, and immediately tells him it takes two to enter. We need both a master and an apprentice. So Kanan and Ezra proceed to reach out to the Force, and the temple reveals its entrance to both of them so that they can enter. So as they're entering, it leads to a really funny scene. There's these like what we come to find out are dead masters that were sitting there like against the pillars at the entrance.
Right.
So it's just like the remains, right? And Ezra sees them and he literally starts screaming like like a child. I mean, he is a child, but it's like a particularly funny scream. And he's like, what's going on here? And Kanan proceeds to explain to him, those are masters that were here waiting for their Padawans that never returned. So clearly, not all Padawans are successful. So Ezra proceeds to walk in to the temple, and he's like, what are you doing? And Kanan's like, I'm going to wait here with the other masters. That's the way it is. This is your path to Forge, and I'll be here at the end waiting for you. So Ezra's like, but I don't know what I'm looking for. And Kanan tells him nothing and everything. And Ezra's just like super confused. And they show Kanan, well, that's what my master told me.
That's not helpful.
Yeah, it goes back to that scene where he's telling him like the Yodaism. And Ezra's like, what does that even mean? He's like, I don't know what it means. That's what Master Yoda always said.
Right.
So anyways, Ezra, forges on, scared, whatever. So he reaches a fork in the road, and there's actually like 3 different tunnels he can walk down. And it's another funny scene because he proceeds to like play a word game to find out which tunnel to walk down. And he's like, Loth rat, Loth cat, Loth wolf run, pick a path, and all is done. Dude. Anyways. I was cracking up on that part. So when he says that, Kanan appears, it seems that Kanan appears and tells him, he starts criticizing him for not using the Force, and instead he's playing a game to pick the path.
Right.
So Kanan runs off down one of the paths into the darkness, and Ezra chases him. And sure enough, when he gets down there, Kanan's dueling the Grand Inquisitor. And kind of already at that point, something seems off. Well, it seems off because Ezra is actually experiencing visions, or not visions, but he's seen illusions of Kanan and the Inquisitor. So of course Ezra's scared. He walked in there scared. He sees the Inquisitor actually defeat Kanan and pushes him off the cliff as if he was, as if he killed him. And a funny drop there also is he's calling out to Kanan as he's falling, and the Inquisitor says, so that's what he called himself, Kanan. So obviously gives an implication that Caleb has a past to him that that might not be his name.
Question. Okay, that's one of my notes. That's why the only reason I'm interrupting is, so these visions are obviously manifestations of his own fear, of Ezra's own fear from within himself. So my question is how is Ezra able to manifest a vision even from his subconscious of the Inquisitor knowing information about Kanan that Ezra didn't know?
It's not so much Ezra. Yeah, I understand. It's not so much Ezra that is the temple. The temple has such a huge Force presence. Okay. So the temple recognizes what it's going to take for Ezra to overcome this and become a Jedi, right? And it starts presenting to him these manifestations that are from his memory specifically. So that's the challenge. Hey, if this Padawan is meant to be a Jedi, he will overcome what we're going to present him. And I'm speaking on behalf of the temple, right? Right. And if he wasn't meant to be a Jedi. So it's the temple.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so after the Inquisitor defeats the illusion version of Kanan, Ezra's, of course, he gets even more frightened. He proceeds to pick up Kanan's saber and try to duel the Inquisitor, but the lightsaber doesn't turn on. Almost like symbolism, like, see, you're not a Jedi. You can't even ignite the saber.
Yeah.
So in that process, he's scared. He proceeds to fall off the cliff that Kanan fell off of. And as he's falling, he falls into a manifestation of the ghost. He falls into his cabin in the ghost. So it's dark, it's very gloomy, it's very much like a nightmare setting.
Right, almost like he woke up from a dream. Like this whole first half of the episode was a dream, kind of.
Yeah. And then he proceeds to hear the rest of the crew, Zeb, Sabine, and Hera, talking about him. And they're kind of like in the rec room, so to say. And they're not saying like the nicest things about him. Right. I don't remember the exact phrases, but Ezra still, this is still all an illusion. So
the only one that I remember specifically was Sabine saying, he's just a little kid, just kind of like, oh.
Yeah, but then she proceeds to tell him that she pities him.
Yes.
So it's like, it just makes Ezra feel even worse, right?
Right.
So Ezra's listening, and sure enough, I guess Zeb sees him and he confronts him. Well, as I don't remember what Ezra was telling him, but as he's speaking, the Inquisitor you see in the background stabs Zeb through the chest, and then Ezra runs because he's scared, and you hear the Inquisitor basically kill off the rest of the crew. So again, he's running. Now he falls off the Phantom this time, and when he falls, the same way he fell off the cliff, this time he falls back into the temple. So at that point, he starts realizing none of this is real. Right. I can overcome this. I've been alone my entire life. I can do this on my own. So as he's saying that, the Inquisitor appears, and the Inquisitor tells him, everything you saw might have been an illusion before, but I can assure you this is not an illusion.
Yeah.
So again, Ezra has to confront his fears yet again, because now he's facing the Inquisitor by himself. So he's owning up to his fears. He confronts him head on, admits his lack of fear to the Inquisitor. Basically, at that point, the Inquisitor gets angered. He swings his saber for the kill, and guess what? He vanishes. So, again, another illusion, except this time, when the Inquisitor vanishes, like a light kind of appears within the temple, like if the overall vision is over. And this is probably my favorite part. As soon as the light goes on, you hear Yoda's voice, and Yoda is now speaking to Ezra. So keep in mind, Yoda is still alive during Rebels. He's hiding out in Dagobah. So this Yoda that's speaking to Ezra, in my opinion, can very much be, Yoda himself. This is not a manifestation of Yoda. This is Yoda speaking from Dagobah. But because, part of the reason Yoda goes to Dagobah is because the presence of the Force there is so strong. So anyways, you hear that iconic music, Yoda's theme. And I want to talk about a little bit about that, because I've mentioned music before. I got some positive feedback on it. Music's such a huge part of my life, especially Star Wars music.
Yeah.
So again, we talked about painting themes when it comes to music. Well, I don't know about you, Pete, but anytime I hear the Yoda theme, it obviously means Yoda's going to appear. He's going to say something very profound, right? But what always gets me though is that music strikes when at that point in the show or that point in the movie, it feels like all hope is lost. And then Yoda appears and gives, his 2 cents, and it just turns the way of thinking, the mentality around completely. I go back to that scene from The Last Jedi with Luke. Luke had felt like he lost everything at that point. Yoda shows up and sets him straight. This is there again. Ezra feels like he has nothing left, and Yoda proceeds to show up and guide him.
Right.
So it's actually like so that's my take on the Yoda's theme. It's anytime I hear that theme, it's like literally the hair stand up on my arms.
Yeah.
It's funny, but that's the
that's the point. That's the point of a great score. I mean, I know we talked about this before, but that's I never really, I guess I had, but not till you said it. Like, when you do hear the theme, it is like the lowest point of that character. You're right, when all hope is lost, and then here comes the
master.
Yeah.
Basically to tell them, hey, everything's gonna be okay. And then he gives them the best advice they're ever gonna hear. Such good advice that I proceed to think Yoda's talking to me.
Don't we all?
So anyway,
don't we all?
Yeah. So anyways,
just don't answer him back, or else then you've got some issues.
Yeah, then there's probably other issues going on there.
Talking to yourself.
Yeah, so this voice manifests like a wisp, like these golden, I don't know, floating, orbs. And they go into the temple, and Yoda tells him, I'm here as a guide for you. So Ezra proceeds to follow those orbs in. So after that, we immediately are shown Kanan. Kanan's still outside meditating, and he's like, Ezra's taking too long. I need to go check on him. Right. Of course, he's worried, like a good parent should be. And as soon as he gets up, Yoda starts speaking to Kanan also. And basically the conversation goes, hey, man, you look different when I last saw you. Of course, Kanan is a former Padawan from the temple who survives Order 66. Right. And Kanan proceeds to tell him, yeah, that's because I have an apprentice now. And I'm much older, of course. So in that conversation, Yoda starts to recognize his uncertainty in Kanan referring to himself as a master. Mm-hmm. And when he calls him out on it, Kanan basically admits his fear in training Ezra because of who Kanan is. And I spent some time thinking about, what does that mean? Kanan's a great person. Kanan's a good person. And I think it just goes back to, he doesn't know if he is the right person to train Ezra. He's been given the opportunity to do so, but he doesn't feel himself as a teacher because he's never been. So that's what I believe when he tells Yoda, I don't know if I can train Ezra because of who I am. They go back to Ezra, and Ezra proceeds to tell Yoda, hey man, I don't know which way to go. If Kanan was here, he would know which way to tell me. And Yoda's like, oh, you need your master to tell you everything? And then proceeds to tell him, your path, you must decide. Like, your master's not always going to be around. Like, you want to become a Jedi. A Jedi is a path of loneliness. So you need to, grow up. And and he says it, of course, in a much nicer way than that. But I guess that's basically what he's getting at. So again, there's a lot of back and forth here between where they're showing Yoda talking to Ezra, Yoda talking to Kanan. So they go back to Kanan
both of them,
again.
like at the same time.
Yeah, at the same time. Yeah.
So that's another indication of how strong Yoda's force projection is. Because he can have two different conversations at the same time with two different Jedis from a remote location. So
that's true. I didn't think about that. That's a very good point. So Kanan proceeds to tell Yoda that he's not going to let Ezra lose his way like he did. And Kanan admits to being different in his past. And I kind of took that, since we were talking about Kenobi recently, I kind of took that to mean like Kanan's lost his way too. Like ever since he's been on his own, I think at this point he's forged his own path, but I think he's admitting that he's not the same strong, fearless Jedi that he was before, and that's what I took from that conversation. So, and he's allowed
attachments too with Hera and whatnot.
Yeah, he's allowed attachments because nobody's there to tell him otherwise. So
I mean, he's allowed himself to form attachments. Yes. That might be another like self-doubt of like, I'm not following the Jedi way. Like maybe that's kind of lends to what he's the self-doubt he has.
Yeah, that's probably a very good point. Like, I guess that maybe he's recognizing this isn't the Jedi way, I'm doing wrong. So, yeah, that could very much be part of it, rather. So again, cut back to Ezra again with Yoda. Yoda proceeds to ask Ezra, why do you think you must become a Jedi? And this is like a really powerful scene. Ezra proceeds to answer him, I guess because Kanan believes I can. I'll become stronger and more powerful, make the Empire suffer for taking my parents, and I won't be helpless anymore. And of course, everybody recognizes that that's the path to the dark side, revenge. Right. It's not called Revenge of the Sith for other reasons.
and the way that the voice actor, the way he played that scene out, it did sound a little like it reminded me of Hayden Christensen in Revenge of the Sith, or it might have been the one before the Attack of the Clone. But at one point, he's like almost whiny about it. And I mean, in the past, we've made fun of how he's got a whiny delivery, but that it was perfect. Now that I'm seeing it, it was perfect for the Anakin role. It was like, I killed them all, the women and the children, that part. It reminded me when Ezra was, I guess,
getting emotional.
He was getting emotional when he was delivering that line. So anyway. Yeah,
so again, really cool scene because Yoda proceeds to confront him about his statements and says, hey, that's the path to the dark side. And Ezra proceeds to explain what he meant. And this is, talking about the difference between Anakin and Ezra. Here's the difference right here. Ezra confesses that he says what he says because he just wants to protect himself and his friends. This is the reason that he wants to be a Jedi. And then he also says it's not just for them, it's for everybody that's being wronged by the Empire. I want to protect them and help them. Whenever the Ghost crew, whenever my friends, when I encountered them, they were helping people. And when I saw them helping, those people, you should have seen the look on their faces. It's like they felt alive. So Ezra is admitting to Yoda here, like, everything he's doing is selfless. It's nothing he has done up until this point is for him. So
yeah,
in that statement, Yoda proceeds to tell him, well, you have a difficult path before you, but a Jedi you may yet be. So really cool scene.
It was. And it was one of those, I was taking notes, and that's one of the notes that I wrote down to ask you was, as soon as I heard Yoda refer to him as having a lot of fear inside of him and anger, right off the bat, that's what tipped me off. Like, okay, I've heard this before. So my question was, if he sensed that, then why was he still, granted, I guess, given the blessing of Yoda to continue the training? But I mean, you summed it up right there. Is yes, he does have anger and fear inside of him, but it seems almost justified, and like in the sense that he was able to convince Yoda, like you said, that it's for good reason and he wants to do good. So I guess.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. I didn't consider that, in that if if a Jedi prospect, so to say, made that statement to a Jedi in the past, that was an absolute hell no. It's not going to happen. Right. And even if he explained himself in the manner that Ezra did, like they handpicked Jedi, and these Jedi as kids, so that by the time they reach these ages where they're having all these different thoughts, they don't exist. And Ezra's not a youngling. The guy's, he's like 14 or 15 years old, I think we said. So he's at the age where back in the day, Yoda would have said he's too old to be in the training.
It could also be because back in the day there were thousands of Jedis to choose from, or potential ones, that they had enough surplus to be able to turn some away. But like now, if he senses someone that's that strong in the Force, maybe we give him a second chance. Give him
definitely. Given the circumstances, I think Yoda is smart enough at this point to know, like, hey, maybe we were wrong. We did lose. We need to adjust the way we think. We were cocky. We were full of it in our ways, and that's not the right path. He doesn't say this outright, but Yoda's definitely the wisest person on the council for a reason. Like in any Star Wars medium where Yoda shows up, there's always some type of conflict that's presented to the council, and Yoda always like, he's the good cop. He's never the hard ass parent. He's the one that's like, okay, well, let's justify this here.
Right.
Let's hear what they have to say. There is some form of reasoning to what they said. Sometimes he does put his foot down, but in a lot of cases, he is very sympathetic. He sees what is right, in between what is flawed in the Jedis.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. So we're coming to a close of the episode here.
Yeah. So after Yoda proceeds to tell him a Jedi you may yet be, they show Ezra kind of like ascend to, it's almost like a different universe. He's like in this invisible platform and you just see stars. And keep that in mind, because we do revisit this place in season 4 of Rebels. I'm going to leave it at that, but just keep that in mind. And when he ascends to this place that's basically space, like in complete silence, a kyber crystal actually proceeds to descend to him, and he gets it, and he's looking at it in awe. He doesn't know what it is. So that's the point where Ezra walks back to exit the temple, and he approaches Kanan, and he shows Kanan what he has, and Kanan's just like astonished. Like, he tells him, hey, Ezra, like, that's a kyber crystal. A kyber crystal is used to power a Jedi's lightsaber. So, I didn't expect anything like this to happen. I expected you to be challenged and grow as a Jedi, but you've just taken a large step. You've actually been granted a kyber crystal to build your lightsaber. And that basically, as a Jedi, that establishes you as like, it's going to happen. Now you've hit this first hurdle. Here's your weapon. Now your physical training, is going to begin. So you can tell he's equally as excited as Ezra is at that part of the episode.
And we all were. We all were to see that happen, because I mean, obviously, like you said, there was a really funny part where Kanan was like, Do you know what that is? That's a kyber crystal. And he's like, no way, a kyber crystal? What's a kyber crystal? still showing that he's still a goofy kid underneath all of this heaviness that is about to be placed upon him.
Yeah. So that actually brings us to the ending of the show. There's one final scene, which is a really good scene. Definitely not going to leave it out. So they showed the ghost crew sitting around again at their lounge, so to say, and they're waiting for Ezra to finish building his saber. I think Zeb says he's been working on it for weeks. Like, can you finish already? So they're talking about it, and it's cool because they all proceed to say how they helped chip in parts to help him. They had all these spare parts that they gave to him to allow him to build the saber, and Sabine tells, even Chopper donated some type of circuit. But it was funny because I was like, okay, like, you guys are donating scrap. I took that as Chopper donating like a piece of him. If he actually had the most meaningful donation. which is probably the biggest heart I've ever seen from Chopper, and probably will ever see if that is the case.
Yeah, that's true. But it was a really nice moment because in a way, like, they all donated to help build the lightsaber. So in a way, like, they all became Jedis, or at least some small part.
Yeah, and actually forgot about that part.
Further enforcing the family aspect of that crew.
Yeah, and actually forgot about that part with reference to this episode, that they donated parts. So it's not just Ezra didn't build the saber on his own. He thought of his family, and they all added to it, which is really cool. So Ezra like burst into the room, right? And he's like, it's finally done. And he hands it to Kanan. He's like, I wanted to show it to you for your approval before I ignite it. And Kanan looks at it, and it's just like, it's clearly something you've never seen before, in the Star Wars universe as a saber. It looked to keep it simple, in my opinion, it looks like a stapler gun.
It does. It looks like a nail gun, kind of ta ta ta.
Yeah, it looks like a nail gun.
Right.
So of course Kanan looks at it and he kind of like smirks, or I don't know what, and he's like, it's different, but that seems to be about right for you. So he hands it back to Ezra in approval. Ezra ignites the saber, and he's looking at it in awe, and that's where the episode ends. Perfect.
Like I said, top to bottom, it had action, it had suspense, it had appearances from legendary characters. It had everything. This episode was the best episode that we've seen so far, bar none.
Yeah, I agree.
So anyway, that brings us to the end of this episode of Star Wars Rebels. And, what else can we say that we haven't already said? It was the best episode so far. And that also brings us here to the end of Good Morning Lothal, the unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast. And before we go, I just want to once again ask that you please like, rate, subscribe, and share anything that you can. Rolly does a really good job of posting on social media almost daily. So if you see something you like, something makes you laugh, something interests you, just give that thing a share and help us out. Also, for traditional podcast listeners, we are on all the platforms. So just look for Good Morning Lothal anywhere that you get your podcasts. Anything else you want to add, Rolly, before we let them go?
Just want to reinforce again, comments. Drop us your comments. Drop us what you think about the show. Participate. Ask us for stuff that we're not doing. You're like, hey, well, can you guys talk about this? Or give us recommendations. Like, why aren't you guys doing this? There is no rude comments. If it's to make a better show for our supportive audience, we're definitely gonna listen to it, and we're gonna do what we can to include that. So I highly appreciate every comment that I receive, no matter how big or small, that I've gotten from everybody that's reached out to me so far. You have added to what this show has become over these 10 episodes that we've done.
Without a doubt. Okay, so that, like I said, brings us to the end of this episode. Next episode is episode 11. Very interesting title. It's called Idiot's Array.
Yes.
We haven't played this in a while, but what do you think is going to happen in that episode?
I was hoping you were going to ask me, because I do know the answer to that. I know what an Idiot's Array is. And that's thanks to the books. So just to give you guys thanks to give you guys a clue, it is related to Sabak. It is a winning hand of Sabak. So think of it as a royal flush in poker.
Perfect. All right. So then if that brings us to the end of this episode, then this is Pete Salas along with
Rolando Zamora
saying, may the force be with you always. goodbye from Lothal.